Thank you, everyone. I would like to thank the organizers of this conference for allowing us to share our work today. And I'm very honored to be part of this panel tonight in Argentina, actually. Well, I will be speaking on behalf of all TransCITAR study group. I will skip the summary slide. So, as you may know, transgender people suffer from high levels of stigmatization, which underlies the context of vulnerability in which they live, and also the high burden of physical and mental health disease. In Argentina, estimated HIV prevalence in transgender women is 34%, and the main route for this acquisition is condomless anal sex. There is a lot of evidence that shows and widely reports of the strong association between stigmatization and unsafe sexual practices. However, the mechanisms that underlie this association still remain unclear. There are different sort of hypotheses, like, for example, people who have suffered from discrimination or stigmatization, they, in the future, lack the skills to, for example, negotiate safer sex, or that sometimes people don't use condoms as a way to show intimacy or trust in a future relationship when they are looking to establish this sort of relationships. However, based on our experience of more than a decade working with transgender women, and taking into account the minority stress model, what we believe is that psychological distress may explain the pathway in this association between stigma and unsafe sex. What the minority stress model posits is that people from minority groups are constantly exposed to a very unique social and chronic stressor. Why is unique? Because it's based on their identity. It is social, as Gary said today. We just like live in an economic situation, just a contextual level, in every single interaction. That makes that this stressor is also chronic. When we activate a physical response to stress, and we are vigilant all the time, it also leads us to problems in health, but also people, what we will develop is anxiety, depression. They may develop, it's not they will, but they may develop anxiety, depression, and other psychological issues. So having this in mind, what we did was to explore the mediating role of depressive symptoms in the relationship between gender identity stigma and discrimination and condomless anal sex in transgender women participating in TransCITAR. That is a prospective cohort study that follows physical and psychological health of transgender women in Buenos Aires, Argentina, particularly in Fundación Huésped. There is a trans-competent clinic that has peer navigators and all the staff trained. So what we did was a sub-analysis of baseline data of psychological interviews. And we conduct a path analysis to examine this mediating hypothesis and the association between the relationships. To assess for depressive symptoms, we use the CSD scale. And for gender identity discrimination, we consider all the experiences of enacted stigma at different settings, like family, education, healthcare, police interactions. And also we use another scale that assesses gender identity stigma in a broader, with a broader scope, because we included not only measures of enacted stigma, but also anticipated stigma like fearless or, for example, avoidant behavior, and also internalized stigma that, as Julie presented today, it is one of the most damaging because actually creates a negative self-image, affects our coping skills, our resilience, that it is quite needed in a population that is constantly stigmatized. And for condomless anal sex, what we did was to assess the number of receptive and insertive practices in the last month. We found in a sample of 420 transgender women very high levels of social vulnerability. 42% have a positive HIV result. And one of the things that we found as well was that 50% of the sample reported sexual or physical violence, and a third actually met the criteria for depressive symptoms. When we test for this model and this mediation effect of psychological distress, well, we found that the model has a very good fit. And for those who are not familiar with a path analysis, those numbers, they are not p-values. They actually represent the relationship in between the variables, and the plain lines represent the direct path. So we did found that discrimination alone did not explain condom-less anal sex, and was neither a direct path for depressive symptoms. However, when we take into consideration a broader scale of stigma that considers enacted, internalized, and anticipated stigma, we did found that people who actually experience more situations of gender identity stigma were more likely to develop depressive symptoms, and consequently, they were more likely to engage in unprotected sexual practices. So, overall, we shed light on the mechanisms that actually function between stigmatization and unsafe sexual practices. And we show that depressive symptoms play a mediating role in this association. What does it mean, or why is this important? Well, actually, Julie did it very well because she has an example of that. We believe that in HIV and STI, for HIV and STI preventive intervention, we need to build and consider a broader approach in our toolkit. For example, including measures of depression or other mental health issues, but also including elements or interventions that help to provide participants with skills to build in self-care or trauma-informed, or giving them more coping skills. And overall, and going back to the initial presentation of this panel, one of the important things we believe is that we need to continue advocating for social inclusion in different programs, to have more trans-inclusive environments, and we need more anti-discriminatory policies that will help to reduce stigma and therefore its negative consequences on health. So I would like to thank all the team from Fundación Huésped that just contribute to this work, and particularly for all the participants of our cohort. Thank you very much.